Will democracy survive the next couple of years?
And essentially we are the same.
And there are so many needs that Minnesota has.
What people are saying they need right now.
Access to democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Thomson Reuters, the Answer Company. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center in Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Firefly Credit Union, with locations throughout the Twin Cities, has proudly served Minnesotans since 1925. Firefly guides its members forward by delivering customized financial solutions to improve their lives in all aspects of banking. Firefly Credit Union, they light the way with life illuminated. Edina Eye, Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years. Now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services for dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
And welcome. Access to Democracy returns. Alan Miller here in the host seat today, and as I have been for 21 years now, but with some really, really good guest hosts. And today we have a first-time guest whose name will ring a bell with everybody because it's Christopher Crutchfield. And we can talk about the Crutchfield family. They are icons in
Proud to be a
Minnesota.
part of it, yeah.
And not only is your brother a sometime guest and full-time sponsor, I say benefactor. We're not supposed to have sponsors on
I get it.
local access programs, but you have really an incredible background and very unique diversion of things. Other than the fact that you love to fish, you like to fish cold weather, hot weather, ocean otherwise, and you're actually taking your father ice fishing for the first time?
I absolutely am. Actually, we go fishing in the summer every year, and then we go ice fishing. And I would like to just start out by saying that I have a great family. I was born on third base. The things that I do because I stand on the shoulders of my mother and my father and my brother, and it's made my life so much easier. And that is something I'm really proud of, and something that has really helped me. And so my father's from Alabama and grew up fishing in the hills of coal country, and since has come here to Minnesota, and we fish for walleye and pike and bass, and we are going to be heading up to Lake of the Woods. We have an ice shack rented, and we're going to spend a couple of days with my children as well doing some fishing.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And you have a niece also, when you're talking about talented Crutchfields. Olivia is an incredibly talented young woman.
She, I was joking before the show started because it used to be people would call, and they still do, they call me on a regular basis trying to get in to see my brother because he's so busy. But this summer, people were calling me trying to get in to see my niece. She was totally booked up doing senior pictures and family photos, and she was just finished her freshman year in college, and she was completely booked, and they were trying to squeeze in to get their senior pictures done or family pictures done because she's just so excellent.
And she's taken such great pictures. And of course, we had her on the show, and some of the pictures that she had from Cuba were just amazing. And actually, Sharon and I got down to Havana this past year, and we were there on a ship, and we got to see Havana and all, and that was the day that the administration canceled everybody's right to visit.
Uh-oh.
So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the captain comes on and says, anybody who had booked a tour for tonight, you can't go because the government just stopped it. And then 20 minutes later, he came back and he said, you can go, but you've got to be back by midnight because the ban starts at midnight. So we were able to go to our cabaret, which was just wonderful, and the Cuban people were wonderful, and it was such a good time. And we were supposed to have the cabaret until midnight, which would have been great. They actually shut it down at 11 o'clock so we could get back to the ship. And I was the last of the people to walk on board at 20 of 12, and I then wrote an article, "The Last American in Cuba."
Wow.
But we won't talk about politics today because I'm going to keep my blood pressure down.
I am sorry that that's cut off. It's a fascinating, wonderful place. And Olivia's pictures, her photos, really captured just the mojo, the essence of the place.
And the people.
Yes.
And she really is a really, really good artist.
I think one of the spirits of Cuba is the wonderful spirit of its people, and she captures the spirit of the people in her photography. There's a picture of a young boy on a horse, which is, of all the photos she's ever taken, my very, very favorite.
She's also a very talented pianist, and she's got so many talents, but everybody in your family seems to have so many talents. But now here's you, Deputy Director of Community Relations for Ramsey County Corrections.
Correct.
What does that mean?
What that means is Ramsey County Corrections, we supervise anyone who's come out of jail or prison that resides in Ramsey County, as well as we supervise all those on probation in Ramsey County. And as Deputy Director, I help the Director on larger policy issues as well as communication issues. So we've done a really deep dive into juvenile justice reform, starting really back in 2005. We've dropped our population at our juvenile detention center. There were 95 kids the day I started. Today, I think there are 23 kids there. So we've really pushed some really significant reform out and helping with reform efforts and other bigger pictures.
And certainly we know how badly reform is needed, and if we could get the guns out of the hands of some of these kids and get them into some educational programs, we'd be doing a hell of a lot better.
I agree. Over and over again, guns are involved, and guns are just such a huge problem. If we could get these guns out of the hands of kids, it would go a long way.
So you do that, but you're also an attorney.
I am.
And as an attorney, you are an adjunct professor at St. Cloud University.
I am.
And also at my old home, Inver Hills College, excuse me. And you teach what? Media law?
Yeah, and I taught at St. Cloud State up until this semester, and I taught media law, which is a lot of fun. Talking to young people who want to be mass communications majors about copyright and copyright infringement and trademark and what is a contract, and really explored a lot of those issues, especially because the world of copyright and trademark is changing with the internet. And so how do we catch up with that and make sure these kids are up to speed? And that was really fun. And then I've just started a real new adventure at Inver Hills. I'm in my first semester. I'm teaching paralegals, and I'm teaching them about litigation.
They have a great program.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah, when I was there, I wasn't teaching anything involving the law. I was teaching a course on the Holocaust and genocide in the 20th century.
Wow.
And it was a very popular course, but it only lasted 6 years. Even though it was oversubscribed, every semester I had to turn people away. You know, they go, please, can we get in and take the course? But, you know, we had to cut it off. But
well, you should bring that back. I'd take it. It sounds really fascinating.
It was, of all the courses I've taught, and I've taught in law schools, I've taught in colleges, it was the favorite for me of all. And it opened the eyes of students to things that they just don't teach in school anymore. We don't teach civics, we don't teach social sciences, and computers are not the answer to everything.
You know, it's funny you mention that. because teaching at St. Cloud State, it's half online. So half the weeks I record myself and post it on their website, and the youth watch me online. And that's hard for me because I'm old school. I like to be in the classroom and I like to have the interchange. I can do that every other week, but it's a different experience doing it online. And going back to the Holocaust, I worry that some young people don't understand what really happened and how serious it was and how unbelievably tragic it was. What went on up before, during, and after the war.
And it's not just the Jewish population, which was certainly almost exterminated in Europe, 6 million plus, but there were 50 million people that died during that period of time throughout the world. And in Germany alone, it wasn't just, again, the Jews. It was also the Roma, the Gypsies. It was also a lot of the intellectuals. It was also people who had various physical impairments, and they were just exterminated, and they don't know. And I used movies to teach the course, and I would actually love to teach it again because it was so successful. And it really, really opened so many eyes as to a portion that we don't talk about nearly enough. And you can look at the state of the world today with all the wars and the killing and the tribal wars that are going on. And, you know, we haven't learned a lot because we can't control the one thing, which is the sanctity of life, the value of human life.
I agree. And we also talk in my class, we talk about free speech versus hate speech. And I worry. I worry about, because of course I believe in free speech and I believe that free speech is the best weapon against other free speech, but the rise on campus of this hate speech, it's very troubling to me. And it's almost like we've forgotten where we've come from, we've forgotten what's happened. And this whole hate speech and supremacist movement is rising a little bit.
And it's so easy to foment it with the use of the computer and the handheld, really the phones and everything else that, you know, the students don't seem to leave without. They almost have an appendage stuck to their hand. And I know when we visit with our grandkids, it drives me crazy. And our kids too, for that matter. It drives me crazy that they're so reliant on the cell phone as opposed to the things that are really important, and discussion and communication, which we're losing in this society.
But we're doing it right now, so that's good, right?
And we'll do it some more too. And you're doing it at Inver Hills right now, so that's very important. And of course, you're also a naturalist. Talking about the many things that Chris Crutchfield is, you're a naturalist. You were president of the Audubon Society, and you're so involved, not just with fishing, but with wildlife and other things.
I think it is absolutely critical to get young people out of doors, to get us all out of doors. But something really special happens to us when we're out in the woods. And whoever had an epiphany on 5th in Minnesota, right? Whoever had an epiphany in the Skyway, you do your most soulful and your best thinking and creating when you're out amongst nature. And I think it's really important to bring young people and expose them and have experiences with them out in the woods.
And it really gives you a perspective of how insignificant we are individually in the scope of things, because you know you are less than a micro dot in the world, but nothing really, in my experience, and I was a Boy Scout back in the days when it was fashionable to be a Boy Scout. That was back in the days when we had the Pony Express, but I don't know. But gives you perspective about the earth and the world and where we factor into it.
I was part of a program that used to take children up to Camp Ripley up in central Minnesota, and we stayed in a T building but we spent most of our time out in the woods. And we take most of the youth were from St. Paul and Minneapolis, from the inner cities, and we'd get up there around Friday, and by about Saturday afternoon, them being outside and us doing all these activities and them having good nutritious food, that you'd see them just settle in and just really enjoy themselves and have really significant experiences with each other and with the adults they were with. And even today, I'll be at Cub Foods or somewhere, and you're the Camp Ripley guy. And they talk about how important that was to their life. Or other children I know who go up to camp or have a cabin, and how important that is to their well-being.
And it is, and again, that's another thing that we're letting get away from us in this society, and it's not to the betterment of society. It really is to the detriment of society. But you have one more activity that we haven't discussed so far, and you've been doing it for 25 years, and that is the Underground Railroad, reenactments of the Underground Railroad. Now, why don't you tell us what the Underground Railroad is and was?
Sure, and it's a simulation that was started by my good friend Kamau Kambui back in the 70s, and he loved Harriet Tubman, and he was from Michigan. He spent some time down in Mississippi, came up here, and really thought deeply about the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman, and would take people out on hikes and night hikes and talking about what the Underground Railroad was, and slowly developed a program, a simulation, where people would come, and he did a lot of them at a place called Wilder Forest, where people would come to a conference center, a place like Wilder Forest, and he'd sit them down in a group and talk to them, or maybe around a fire, about what the Underground Railroad was, what it was about slavery, and then when it got good and dark, would bring them out into the woods and would have them in their mind think about what it might have been like trying to get to freedom using the Underground Railroad. And he did it by himself at first, but then he enlisted my help and other people's to be actors in the woods of conductors that helped on the Underground Railroad. And he'd even have people shaking chains and doing stuff like that to have the group hide. And
I think people don't realize that there was a reverse Underground Railroad and the Underground Railroad, which was really intended to give freedom to mostly slaves who were trying to escape because they were being picked up even after the Civil War, even after they were declared to be free individuals. People would kidnap them and take them down south where they were sold at auction. And the Underground Railroad really intended to get them to freedom, perhaps get them to Canada if necessary. And they used the Mississippi River, which was so important then and is so important in our lives that people probably don't understand and appreciate. And you mentioned Harriet Tubman, who was really one of the principals of the Underground Railroad, one of the people whose picture should not only be on
the $20 bill,
our $20 bill, but one of the people who got individuals together to shepherd these people to safety. And that meant hiding in caves. That meant people, and the Quakers were very involved in hiding. I can't call them escaped slaves because they weren't escaped slaves at that time. They were free, but in danger.
Even in Minnesota, Pilgrim Baptist Church was started by a group of slaves that came up on a raft, and I think they were towed up on a paddle boat, and they came and settled in Minnesota and started Pilgrim Baptist. And there were lots of stories having to do with slaves that were brought up to the north and brought up to Minnesota as servants and other things, and they would grab them or with them, and they would help them escape or grab them and get them to Canada. So there was actually Underground Railroad activity here in Minnesota, which was
a lot of it in places like let me see if I have the Brownsville, Minnesota, and Rushford, Minnesota, and how people would hide them in caves, or even there was a flood in 2007 here, and a house had to be destroyed, and in taking it apart, they found a hidden closet door, and down below the kitchen was a 16 to 30-foot room where they hid slaves as they had to stop on their journey north. And it was just an incredible experience. So you have been involved with that for 25 years.
And I really have to talk about something, and that is that they have tried to replicate. We've never had any issues. Our program is always a very positive program, and it always talks about freedom and the value and issues surrounding freedom. And all of us, I mean, people went through Underground Railroads, but it doesn't matter what culture you're from. People went through Underground Railroads for all of us to be here. They went through trials and tribulations for all of us to be here, no matter what color we are. And we're very, very deliberate about how we run the program. We don't put anybody in cages. We don't call anybody the N-word. We don't catch anybody. That's all. What we do is pretty much a glorified night hike. Tell people understand and appreciate what it was like to be on the Underground Railroad. And
if you can empathize at all, knowing that you are free, knowing that at the end of the evening you're going to go back to your life,
That's right.
et cetera, as opposed to, as you said, putting people in cages. Well, we only need the current administration to do that.
It's shameful. That is absolutely shameful. But I just wanted to touch base on the fact we actually had an article that came out on our Underground Railroad program in the New Yorker magazine, I think this week, where they flew in a crew and followed us around. And it was through that article I found out there had been some issues in other states where groups had tried to put on the Underground Railroad, but a lot of times people who run camps or run environmental centers, there aren't a lot of people of color, and they've run into problems doing the railroad. We haven't had any problems because we're very deliberate about how we do it, and it's been a very successful program in Minnesota.
And people don't necessarily like to talk about the fact that it was successful, that it really revolved around people of color,
Yes.
and that there are prejudices to talking about that aspect of history. We're getting that in many respects in terms of even history books, eliminating things that are really, really germane and important, but certain people don't want us to hear what they don't want us to hear, like it'll go away.
And I think to trade the idea of telling a whole story to promote the idea of American exceptionalism does injustice to American exceptionalism. And so there have been some history books and some textbooks that have left things out in order to talk about how great this country is. And this country is great. I love this country. But we need to tell the whole story, and we need to leave it all in. And I think that's really important for our children to understand the whole story.
And, it's important for people to know that there were people who were grabbing and kidnapping these people. There was the Sinclair case in Philadelphia where 5 boys were kidnapped, and until one escaped, their story was not told. They were taken down south because they were needed to work on the sugar cane and to pick cotton, and not dissimilar to the fact that we need immigrants today to do work that a lot of people in this country don't want to do, and where the immigrants are willing to do it. And we have such tragedy in this country at the present time, not dissimilar to what was going through
slavery
then.
was the law of the land back then. So Harriet Tubman she was a desperado. She was an outlaw, right? People who helped slaves escape on the Underground Railroad, we consider them heroes now. We're going to put Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill. But back then, she was looking at significant prison time because she was breaking the law.
She'll be on the $20 bill, not under this administration. But let's not get political because I'll do another hour.
The other thing I wanted to mention was just the historical piece that Dred Scott spent his time at Fort Snelling. And the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision was really important for the start of the Civil War, and but that he was living at Fort Snelling when he said, "I am no longer a slave because I'm not living in slave territory." So we have a Minnesota connection there as well.
And again, so how many people have you taken through this program in 25 years, do you think?
Several thousand. We've 10 and 12 a year for 25 years, 20 to 40 people per program. I'd have to do the math on that, but several thousand, yeah.
And it's so important, and it's another facet of your life.
And it's one that I love very much. And also it brings me great satisfaction because, again, I'm in Cub Foods or I'll be in Target, and this happens every other week. Someone says, "I remember you from the Underground Railroads, blah, blah, blah." And the good feeling and the good memory and the appreciation is always there. And we talk about what group they're with. I usually remember, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful program and a wonderful experience in Minnesota.
And we thank you for that. We really do. You have 5 children. Have any of them gone through the underground experience?
All of my friends, all of my relatives, all of my children, they've all had to be part of it. It's one of those things. It's kind of my eldest daughter, Mahogany, just now she's getting married. She was an actor. My second eldest daughter, Carmen, and my daughter, Coral, help out currently. My son has been through it. The only person who hasn't is my little 7-year-old Karina, and she's raring to go. But we don't let people come on the program until they're about 12. So, but my brothers have been on the program. All of my friends, coworkers, it's one of those things. And I also am really proud of the people that help put it on. We have a really strong staff. They all started when they were 15, 16, 17 years old, and now they are in their early 30s, and they've grown up around it. As a matter of fact, most of my crew is in Greece right now. They all travel together. They've married, and it's been wonderful through the program. They've been kind of a cohort that stayed together. So that's been wonderful.
And we actually almost blew this whole interview already. We have a minute left.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
We've gone through this whole time. I thought maybe we'd spend 5 or 7 minutes. I didn't know it's been so long.
It's unbelievable. People say that all the time. They say, the time goes so fast, and it does. So we'll have you back again, and we'll talk some more, because you've had so many lives here that a cat has 9, but I think you've had more than a cat.
Well, I appreciate
of the
this
things
program.
you're involved in.
I appreciate this program. It's an excellent program and what you do and what you bring to Minnesota. I'm just so happy to be here and be part of it. So thank you very much for having me on.
It's been a long time to get you here. We've had the whole rest of the family, but over the years. And no, it's really been our pleasure. And thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you.
And to be continued.
To be continued.
Chris Crutchfield, man of many talents.